I already told everyone she would handle it. My mother-in-law said that so casually you might have thought she was reminding someone to pass the salt. The room went quiet for just a second, long enough for me to realize she was talking about my sister-in-law's apartment. I hadn't agreed to anything. Across the table, my sister-in-law kept cutting her green beans like she hadn't heard a word. My husband shifted in his chair and reached for his water glass without looking at me. My mother-in-law was still smiling at the couple from church sitting beside her. "She's always the responsible one," she added. And suddenly, 8 people at that dinner table were looking at me like the decision had already been made. The first hint that something was off didn't actually happen at that dinner table. It happened a few days later in a church parking lot, the kind with faded white lines and gravel crunching under your shoes when you walk toward your car. Sunday mornings there were always loud in a quiet way. Car doors closing, kids laughing somewhere behind the building, someone dragging folding chairs across the pavement near the fellowship hall. I was halfway to my car when a woman from the congregation waved at me. She smiled the way people do when they think they already know something about you. "I heard you're helping your husband's sister with the apartment situation," she said. "That's really kind of you." For a second, I just stood there, keys in my hand, because I had no idea what she was talking about. Not the part about helping. That wouldn't have surprised me. It was the way she said it, like it was already a done deal. Like everyone knew. I laughed a little, mostly because I didn't know what else to do, and said something vague about family helping family. The kind of sentence you say automatically when you're standing in a parking lot and someone is waiting for a friendly response. But when she walked away, I didn't get in my car right away. I stood there for a moment, watching people leave the building in small groups, and tried to remember if I had actually agreed to something and forgotten about it, because that happens sometimes. You say yes to something casually and it becomes bigger later. Still, nothing came to mind. The truth was, helping my husband's sister had never felt like a big decision. Over the years, it had always been small things. A ride when her car was in the shop, looking over a lease when she was nervous about signing it, picking up groceries on my way home because she texted saying she was short until her next paycheck. Individually, none of those moments felt important enough to keep track of. They were just part of the rhythm of the family I had married into, which is probably why it didn't occur to me at first that those small moments might be turning into something else, something bigger, something people were already talking about like it was my responsibility for the next few days. That conversation in the parking lot kept replaying in my head at odd moments, not in a dramatic way, just small flashes of it while I was doing other things. Standing in line at the grocery store, waiting for the microwave to finish. Sitting in my car outside the office building before going in for work. "You're helping your husband's sister with the apartment." The sentence itself wasn't the problem. It was the certainty in her voice, like it had already been discussed somewhere else before it ever reached me. I tried to shrug it off at first. Families talk, people exaggerate things. Maybe my mother-in-law had mentioned something in passing and it had grown into a bigger story by the time it reached the church parking lot. That seemed like the most reasonable explanation. And, if I'm being honest, I wanted that explanation to be true, because the alternative would mean someone had been volunteering my help without asking. A few days later, my husband and I were in the kitchen after dinner. The dishwasher was running, making that steady humming sound it always makes right before the water drains. I was rinsing a glass when I brought it up casually. "Did your mom say something to people about me helping your sister with an apartment?" He leaned against the counter, scrolling through something on his phone. "Probably," he said. "She worries about her." The answer was so quick that it almost sounded like the question didn't matter. "I mean, did we agree to something I asked?" He looked up then, just for a second. "I'm sure she just meant you've helped before," he said. "You know how she talks." That explanation landed exactly where he meant it to, right in that comfortable space where things feel easier if you don't examine them too closely. And I tried to leave it there. But a few evenings later, my phone buzzed while I was folding laundry in the living room. It was a text from my sister-in-law. "Hey, quick question," she wrote. "If the leasing office calls you back tomorrow, can you just confirm the income thing Mom said you already understand the paperwork? I stared at the message longer than I should have. Because that wasn't a question about whether I could help. It was written like the decision had already been made. Like I had somehow become the person responsible for explaining her situation to a leasing office I had never spoken to. I typed a reply, deleted it, then typed another. Before I could send anything, another message popped up, this one from my mother-in-law. Sweetheart, Lydia said she texted you about the apartment. Thank you again for stepping in. It means a lot to the family. That was the moment something shifted. Not anger. Not yet. Just a quiet realization that the story people were telling about me had started moving forward without me. The next morning, I drove to work earlier than usual. Not because I had a meeting. I just needed a little quiet before the day started. The office parking lot was still half empty when I pulled in. A few cars scattered across the asphalt. The morning air still cool enough that my windshield fogged slightly when I turned the engine off. I sat there for a moment with my phone in my hand, staring at the message from my sister-in-law again. If the leasing office calls you back tomorrow, the thing was, I had never called the leasing office, which meant someone else had, and they had given them my number. I tried to picture how that conversation might have gone. My mother-in-law standing in her kitchen with the cordless phone, speaking in that calm, reassuring voice she used when she wanted people to trust her. Yes, my daughter-in-law understands the paperwork. I rubbed my forehead and finally typed a response. I haven't spoken with the leasing office yet. Maybe it's better if you talk to them directly. I kept the tone light, neutral. A few seconds later, the typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, the message came through. Oh, Mom thought you were already helping with that. That sentence sat there on my screen longer than it should have. Not angry, not defensive, just certain. Like the situation had already been explained somewhere else and I was the only person catching up late. Later that afternoon, my phone rang while I was at my desk. Unknown number. Normally, I let those go to voicemail, but something about it made me answer. Hello. A woman's voice responded immediately. Hi. Is this Scarlett? I'm calling from the leasing office about Lydia's application. For a second, I didn't say anything. The fluorescent lights above my desk hummed softly, and someone down the hallway laughed at something I couldn't hear. Yes, this is Scarlett, I said slowly. Great, the woman continued, cheerful and efficient. Your mother said you could confirm some income details for us. Your mother. Not even mother-in-law, just mother. Like the whole situation had already been neatly packaged into a simple explanation. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the stack of shipping invoices on my desk. In that moment, something became very clear. No one had technically forced me to do anything. No one had demanded money. No one had even asked directly. Instead, the help had been introduced first, announced, repeated, and then quietly moved forward as if my agreement had always been part of the plan. The woman on the phone was still waiting. Hello! I realized then that this was probably the first time the story had reached a point where my answer would actually matter. I didn't answer the leasing office right away. I told the woman I needed to check something and asked if she could call back later that afternoon. She agreed without hesitation. Like this kind of delay was completely normal. After the call ended, I sat there for a minute staring at my computer screen without really seeing it. The office around me had started filling up. Chairs rolling across the floor. Someone opening a bag of chips in the break room down the hall. The steady rhythm of keyboards starting up for the day. And in the middle of all that ordinary noise, something in my head finally lined up in a way it hadn't before. For weeks, I had been trying to explain the situation in the most generous way possible. Maybe my mother-in-law had misunderstood something I said. Maybe my sister-in-law assumed I would help because I had helped before. Maybe my husband thought it wasn't a big deal and figured we would sort it out later. Every explanation I came up with gave someone else the benefit of the doubt, but none of those explanations answered the one detail I couldn't ignore anymore. Someone had given a leasing office my phone number, not to ask if I could help, to confirm that I would. That was the part that kept circling back in my mind. The help had already been promised before I ever opened my mouth. I opened my text messages again and scrolled back through the conversation with my sister-in-law. Her first message wasn't really a question. If the leasing office calls you, not if you're okay helping, not would you mind, just the assumption that I was already involved. Then I opened the message from my mother-in-law. Thank you again for stepping in. Again. Like it had already happened. Like I had already said yes somewhere. That was when I understood something I probably should have noticed earlier. No one in that situation thought they were doing anything wrong. My mother-in-law believed she was helping her younger daughter by reassuring people that someone reliable was involved. My sister-in-law believed the problem was already being handled because that's what she had been told. And my husband, well, my husband had gotten used to a system where things stayed peaceful as long as I quietly made problems disappear. The realization didn't make me angry right away. What it did was make everything suddenly very clear. This wasn't about one apartment. It wasn't about one favor. It was about the role I had slowly been placed into without ever agreeing to it. The person who fixes things, the person who keeps the family from looking messy, the person whose time and energy could be volunteered before she was even asked. And once I saw it that way, something inside me shifted, not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough that when my phone rang again later that afternoon and the leasing office number appeared on the screen, I knew my answer was going to be different from the one everyone else expected. When the leasing office called back that afternoon, I answered before the second ring. The woman sounded exactly the same as before, calm, efficient, already moving through whatever checklist she had in front of her. "Hi, Scarlett," she said. "I just need to confirm a couple of details about Lydia's application." For a moment, I watched the reflection of my computer screen in the dark glass of my monitor. Then I said something no one in my husband's family had probably expected to hear from me. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." There was a short pause on the line. "I'm actually not involved in her lease application," I continued. "You'll need to speak directly with her." The woman hesitated, probably trying to match what I was saying with whatever note had been written in her system. "Oh," she said eventually. "Okay, I'll reach out to Lydia instead." The call ended quickly after that. Nothing dramatic, no argument. Just one small correction to a story that had already started moving without me. But the real moment came later that evening. We were back at the same dining table as the week before. Same house, same chairs. My mother-in-law had made roast chicken this time, and the smell of garlic and butter filled the kitchen. Halfway through dinner, she turned toward the couple visiting from church. "Scarlett's been helping Lydia with the apartment situation," she said again, the same smooth tone she always used. For a second, no one spoke. I set my fork down carefully on the edge of my plate. "I'm actually not handling that," I said. My voice sounded calmer than I expected. My mother-in-law blinked, just once. "Oh," she said lightly. "I told the leasing office they should talk directly with Lydia." I added, "It's really her application." The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was the kind that spreads slowly around a table. My sister-in-law finally looked up from her plate. My husband shifted in his chair. And my mother-in-law, who had always been very good at guiding conversations, didn't immediately know where to take the next sentence. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse anyone. But for the first time since I married into that family, the story being told about me had been corrected in the room where it started. Things didn't explode after that dinner. No one stormed out. No one raised their voice. My mother-in-law simply moved the conversation somewhere else, the way people do when a topic suddenly stops working the way it used to. But something had shifted. A few days passed and my phone stayed quiet. No new messages asking me to check paperwork. No updates about the apartment that I was apparently supposed to be managing. One evening, I came home from work, dropped my bag by the door, and realized the house felt unusually calm. Not empty. Just calm in a way it hadn't been for a long time. My husband was in the kitchen, rinsing dishes under the sink. After a moment, he said, almost carefully, "Lydia talked to the leasing office herself today." I nodded. That was exactly what should have happened from the beginning. Nobody said it out loud, but the balance in the family had changed a little. Not because I fought anyone, just because I stopped quietly agreeing to decisions that had never been mine. And sometimes that's all a boundary really is. Not a fight, just the moment you decide your silence is no longer part of someone else's plan. If you've ever been in a situation where people kept volunteering you for things you never agreed to, I'm curious how you handled it. Let me know in the comments.